Life at 40 was exactly as I had meticulously planned it, a successful career as a department head, a comfortable home, and a shiny car in the driveway. Love and romance? Those were chapters one had skipped, focusing instead on my spreadsheets and meetings. Until one unassuming evening at my friend Lisa's party, where my well-ordered world took an unexpected turn. "Anna, you need to get out more," Lisa had insisted over the phone. "It'll be good for you." I had reluctantly agreed, not really expecting much from the evening. As I arrived at the party, the atmosphere was buzzing with laughter and chatter. I felt out of place, awkwardly holding a glass of wine, scanning the room for a familiar face. That's when I noticed him. He was in the middle of a lively group, but somehow seemed separate from them. There was an ease about him that caught my attention. He walked over to me, a confident yet friendly smile on his face. "Hi, I'm Tom," he said, offering his hand. "I don't think we've met before." "I'm Anna," I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, reassuring. "First time at one of Lisa's infamous parties?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with amusement. "Is it that obvious?" I said, trying to match his light tone. "Just a lucky guess," Tom chuckled. "So, what brings you here tonight? Friend of the host?" "Yes, Lisa and I go way back. But parties aren't really my scene. I'm more the type to curl up with a good book at home," I admitted. A fellow book lover. What do you like to read?" Tom asked, leaning against the wall, completely engaged in our conversation. "Mysteries mostly. There's something about unraveling a puzzle that's relaxing after a day of work," I said, feeling a bit more at ease. "I get that. I'm more into biographies, though. Real-life stories have a certain appeal, don't you think?" Tom said. The conversation flowed effortlessly from there. We discussed everything from our favorite authors to our jobs. I learned he was a graphic designer, passionate about his work, and surprisingly, 5 years younger than me. His sense of humor was a breath of fresh air. As the night wore on, we somehow found ourselves tucked away in a quieter corner of the room, lost in conversation. It was uncanny how natural it felt to talk to him, as if we'd known each other for years rather than hours. When it was time to leave, Tom insisted on walking me to my car. "I hope I get to see you again, Anna," he said earnestly as we stood beside my car. "I think I'd like that," I found myself saying, surprised by my own willingness to step out of my comfort zone. "Good night, Tom." Driving home, my mind replayed our conversation, his laughter, the ease of the evening. It was unsettling yet exhilarating. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of something new, something unexpected. After that party, Tom and I started seeing each other more. It wasn't like anything I had experienced before. He was thoughtful in ways that caught me off guard. He'd surprise me with my favorite coffee at work or send me texts just to say he was thinking of me. One evening, he invited me over for dinner. I walked into his apartment to find he had cooked an entire meal. "I hope you're hungry," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "I'm impressed. I didn't know you could cook," I said, taking in the spread on the table. "There's a lot you don't know about me," he replied with a wink. "For instance, I make a mean lasagna." As we ate, he told me stories about his family, his dreams, his fears. It was intimate, real. After dinner, we settled on the couch, a comfortable silence enveloping us. "You know, Anna, I never thought I'd meet someone like you," Tom said, looking into my eyes. "Like me? How so?" I asked, feeling a warmth spread through me. "Someone who's not just about the surface stuff. You see the world differently. It's refreshing," he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled, feeling a flutter in my stomach. Weeks turned into months, and our relationship deepened. Tom was charming, not just to me but to everyone around him. He even won over my parents when I introduced him. My mom, who was usually hard to please, said, "He's a keeper, that one." But the real turning point came 6 months into our relationship. It was a regular evening. We were walking in the park after dinner. Anna, I've been thinking, Tom started, sounding serious for once. I don't want to spend another day without you. Marry me. His proposal caught me off guard. Tom, are you serious? We've only been together for 6 months. I know it's fast. But when something feels right, why wait? He argued, his eyes searching mine for an answer. I looked at him, this man who had unexpectedly become my world. Yes, I found myself saying, yes, I'll marry you. Married life started like something out of a storybook. Tom and I were in our own little world, wrapped up in the bliss that comes with being newlyweds. In those first few months, Tom was incredibly attentive. He'd surprise me with little notes hidden around the house, each one making my day a little brighter. One evening, I found a note on the bathroom mirror. Meet me in the backyard, it read. Curious, I made my way outside to find Tom had set up a makeshift projector. Movie night under the stars, he announced proudly. I couldn't help but laugh. You really go all out, don't you? Only the best for my wife, he replied with a wink. As we cuddled under a blanket watching an old classic, I remember thinking I had never been this happy. But it wasn't just the grand gestures. It was the small things too. How he'd make coffee just the way I liked it, or how we'd cook together, dancing around the kitchen to some old tune. One day, as we were making dinner, I playfully splashed him with water. Hey, what was that for? He exclaimed, pretending to be offended. Just keeping you on your toes, I shot back, laughing. He came over, a mock stern look on his face. You're going to pay for that, he said, before breaking into a smile and pulling me into a hug. Life with Tom felt easy, like everything had fallen into place. Even when we disagreed, it was never anything serious. We had this rhythm, this understanding between us that felt natural. But as perfect as everything seemed, there were moments that gave me pause. Like when Tom casually suggested that we should have a joint bank account for convenience. I remember frowning slightly at the idea. Isn't it a bit soon for that? We're doing fine managing our finances separately. He shrugged, a carefree smile on his face. It's just easier this way, isn't it? One less thing to worry about. I hesitated but eventually agreed. After all, we were married now. Sharing a bank account seemed like a logical step in our partnership. The shift was subtle at first. After we merged our bank accounts, I noticed small discrepancies in our finances. Tom started spending more, often on things that seemed extravagant. One evening, I decided to bring it up. We were sitting in the living room, bills scattered on the coffee table. Tom, I've been noticing some large amounts coming out of our account lately. Fancy suits, high-end gadgets, it's a bit much, don't you think? Tom looked up from his phone, seemingly unfazed. Oh, that. Well, I need to look the part, don't I? You can't have your husband looking shabby. I frowned. But we need to be smart about our spending. We have a mortgage and other responsibilities. He waved his hand dismissively. Relax, Anna. We're doing fine. Don't be such a worrywart. That conversation left a sour taste in my mouth. Tom's attitude towards money was so different from mine. I was used to saving, planning for the future, while he seemed to live in the moment, unconcerned about tomorrow. As weeks passed, Tom's behavior started to change in other ways too. He seemed less interested in spending time with me, often opting to go out with his friends instead. Then came the day when Tom dropped another bombshell. He came home early from work, a buoyant smile on his face. Guess what? I've decided to go part-time at work. I'll be working only till noon, he announced cheerfully as he raided the fridge. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Part-time? Why? We haven't discussed this. He shrugged, grabbing a beer. I figured since you're doing so well with your job, I could take it easy. Plus, I want to focus on my hobbies, maybe hit the gym more. I felt a surge of frustration. Tom, we're a team. Decisions like this should be made together. He looked at me, his expression one of annoyance. Why are you making a big deal out of this? It's not like we can't afford it. The conversation escalated from there, ending with Tom storming out of the room. I sat there, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. It was around that time that I suggested maybe we should start thinking about having a child, hoping it would bring us closer. Tom's reaction, however, was far from what I expected. A child? Are you serious, Anna? I think you're a bit too old for that, he said bluntly, not even looking up from his phone. His words stung. I was taken aback by his insensitivity. Too old? That's a harsh thing to say, Tom. He shrugged. It's the truth. Besides, I'm not ready to be tied down with kids. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the Tom I married. He used to be considerate, loving. Now, he was turning into someone I hardly recognized. As the days turned into weeks, the distance between us grew. The man I fell in love with was fading away, replaced by someone who seemed to care only about himself. I started to feel more like an ATM than a wife, a provider rather than a partner. The changes in Tom were becoming more pronounced, and it felt like our marriage was on a slippery slope. His part-time job meant he was home more, but not in the way I had hoped. He spent most of his time at the gym or hanging out with friends, leaving me to handle the household chores. One evening, I came home exhausted from work, only to find the house in a mess. Tom was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "You're home early," I commented, dropping my bag. He didn't look up. "Yeah." Gym was crowded. Decided to skip it. I sighed, looking around. "Tom, since you're home more, do you think you could help out with some of these chores?" He frowned, his tone defensive. "What? Now you want me to be a house husband? That's not my thing, Anna." I felt my patience wearing thin. It's not about being a house husband. It's about helping each other out. He shrugged, unmoved. "I don't know, Anna. I have other things to do." I bit back a sharper retort, feeling a growing sense of frustration and loneliness. It was like talking to a wall. He just didn't get it, or he didn't care. I couldn't tell which was worse. The situation worsened when I suggested he could use his free time for something productive, like taking care of the house or cooking. "Me? Cook? Come on, Anna, you know I'm no good in the kitchen." He laughed it off. "But you could learn. It would be helpful," I pressed, hoping he'd see reason. He scoffed. "I have better things to do with my time." I felt a surge of anger. "Like what? Going to the gym and hanging out with your friends?" He rolled his eyes. "You just don't get it, do you? I need my space, Anna." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was not the partnership I had signed up for. I was working full-time, managing the house, and now, apparently, I was expected to be okay, with his complete lack of contribution. The final straw came when I found out about his demands at home. One evening, I came home late from a particularly grueling day at work. "Hey, what's for dinner?" Tom asked as soon as I walked in. I was taken aback. "I just got home. I thought maybe you'd have something ready since you were home all day." He laughed, as if I had made a joke. "Me? Cook? Come on, Anna. That's your thing." I stood there, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. "My thing? What about teamwork, Tom? What about supporting each other?" He just shrugged, completely indifferent to my feelings. I went to bed that night feeling more alone than ever. The man I had married, the man I thought I knew, was becoming a stranger to me. Our conversations were now either superficial or arguments. The warmth and connection we once shared seemed like a distant memory. One afternoon, while doing a deep clean, I moved the bed to get to the dust underneath and spotted something glinting against the wall. Reaching down, my heart sank as I picked up an earring that certainly wasn't mine. The cold wave of realization hit me hard. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I turned the earring over in my fingers, a storm of questions and fears swirling in my mind. When Tom returned home later, I confronted him directly. "Tom, I found this earring under our bed. It's not mine. Can you explain?" He glanced at the earring with a nervous laugh. "Where did that come from?" "Maybe it's from one of your friends." I knew none of my friends owned anything like this. "No, Tom. My friends haven't been over in ages. And they don't wear this style." He gave a casual shrug, but I could tell he was uneasy. "I don't know, Anna. Maybe it's yours and you forgot about it." I felt frustration building inside me. "I know what my jewelry looks like, Tom. This isn't mine." There was a tense silence. Finally, Tom sighed and admitted, "Okay, it probably belongs to a friend of mine." "A friend?" My voice trembled with a mix of disbelief and hurt. "Yeah, she must have dropped it when she was here," he said, avoiding my gaze. The room seemed to spin as I processed his words. "When she was here? In our house? In our bedroom?" He gave a half-hearted defense. "It's not a big deal, Anna. It was just a visit." I was incensed. "Just a visit? You brought another woman into our home, our bedroom? That's a big deal, Tom." He tried to downplay it, but I could see right through his act. "You're overreacting, Anna. It was nothing." The conversation escalated from there, ending with Tom storming out and me left alone, feeling a deep sense of betrayal. That night, as I lay in bed, Tom's admission replayed in my mind. I realized that my marriage had hit a point of no return. I couldn't just brush this under the rug. I needed to know the extent of Tom's betrayal, to understand what I was dealing with. The next day, I picked up the phone and dialed an old friend. He was someone I had known for years, someone discreet and skilled in handling sensitive situations. "Hey, it's Anna. I need a favor, something personal. I need to know what's really going on when I'm not around. Can you help?" There was a brief pause on the other end. "Of course, Anna. I know just how to handle this. Let's meet and discuss the details." Then came the incident that broke the camel's back. My father had an accident and needed a wheelchair. I found a state-of-the-art model that would give him some independence, but it was expensive. I didn't hesitate, though. This was my dad, and he deserved the best. I was discussing it on the phone with my mom when Tom walked in. "What's that about a wheelchair?" he asked, a curious look on his face. I hung up and turned to him. "My dad had an accident. I'm buying him a modern wheelchair to help him get around." He raised his eyebrows. "Sounds expensive. How much?" I told him the amount, and his reaction was shocking. "Are you crazy? That's a lot of money, Anna." I was taken aback. "It's for my dad, Tom. He needs it." He scoffed. "Your dad's old, Anna. Why waste so much money on a wheelchair? You should be saving that for us, for our future." I felt a surge of anger. "It's my money, Tom. And it's for my dad. I'm not going to skimp on something he needs." Tom's face turned red. "Your money? What about our money? You know what you should be buying instead? That motorcycle I've been looking at. That's a better investment than some old man's wheelchair." I couldn't believe my ears. "A motorcycle? You think a motorcycle is more important than my injured father?" He shrugged. "Yeah, I do. I work hard. I deserve it." I shook my head in disbelief. "You barely work, Tom. And even if you did, my father's needs come before your wants." He got in my face, his voice raised. "You're being selfish, Anna. All you care about is your family. What about me? What about what I want?" I stood my ground. "This isn't about you, Tom. This is about my father needing help, and I'm going to give it to him, whether you like it or not." Tom laughed mockingly. "You know what, Anna? I married you for your money. You're just an old, ugly woman who I thought would be easy to control. But I see now you're just a fool. If you don't buy me that motorcycle, I'll divorce you. And good luck getting married again at your age. Let's see who'd want you after me." I felt a surge of anger mixed with determination. Reaching into the drawer of the coffee table, I pulled out a folder and slammed it onto the table. "These are pictures from a private detective, Tom. They show exactly what you've been up to when I'm not around," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. His smirk faltered as he flipped through the photos, his face turning pale. The images were undeniable proof of his infidelity, his betrayal laid bare for him to see. "And this," I continued, pulling out another set of documents, "is our divorce paperwork. I'm done, Tom. I'm done being disrespected, lied to, and used." He looked up from the photos, his earlier bravado gone. "Anna, please, we can talk about this. I didn't mean those things I said." But it was too late. I had seen the truth behind the man I married, and there was no going back. "I've made my decision, Tom. It's over," I said firmly. As he left the house that day, the folder and divorce papers in his hands, I felt a profound sense of relief mixed with sorrow. It was the end of a painful chapter in my life, but also the beginning of a new, albeit uncertain, journey. The divorce proceedings were nothing short of a roller coaster. Tom, in a desperate attempt to salvage what he could, demanded alimony, citing the stark difference between our salaries. His audacity knew no bounds, and the trial turned into a battleground of accusations and legal maneuvers. I sat in the courtroom, my lawyer by my side, clutching the folder that held all the evidence of Tom's infidelity and betrayal. As his demands for alimony echoed through the room, I felt a mix of disbelief and determination. This was the man I had loved, and now he was trying to exploit me one last time. When it was my turn, I presented everything: the photographs from the private detective, bank statements showing his extravagant spending, and testimonies about his lifestyle. The evidence was overwhelming, painting a clear picture of a man who had taken advantage of my trust and love for his own gain. The judge listened intently, flipping through the evidence, his expression unreadable. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally spoke. The court ruled in my favor. Tom's claims for alimony were dismissed, and the divorce was granted on my terms. I remember exhaling a breath I didn't realize I was holding, a weight lifting off my shoulders. It was over. The legal ties that bound me to Tom were severed, and I was free. In the aftermath of the trial, life slowly started to return to a new kind of normal. I focused on rebuilding myself, reconnecting with the parts of me that had been lost in the shadows of my marriage. One day, as I was having coffee with a friend, she mentioned Tom. "Have you heard about your ex? He's in deep trouble. Debt's piling up, and I heard he's even hiding from some angry husbands." I sipped my coffee, feeling a sense of closure. Really? Can't say I'm surprised. He made his bed, now he has to lie in it. The conversation moved on, but a part of me felt a sense of vindication. Tom's actions had finally caught up with him. It was a harsh reality, but one he had brought upon himself. As I walked home that day, the sun setting in the distance, I felt lighter. The chapter of my life that was Tom was closed, a bittersweet ending to a story that had started with so much promise.
The day I discovered Richard's affair was like any other, until it wasn't. I, Anna, 32, always considered myself observant, but that day, my skills were put to a test I never anticipated. Returning home early from work, I was met with a sight that froze me in my tracks. The garage shutter, always firmly closed, was ajar. Puzzled, I approached cautiously, my heart pounding an erratic rhythm against my chest. Peering inside, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. There, in the midst of our garage, was Richard's prized vintage sports car. And in it, entangled in a passionate embrace, were Richard and a woman I didn't recognize. The audacity of it, in our shared space, was a slap across my face. I stifled a gasp, biting my lip till it hurt. They couldn't know I was there. I needed evidence, something concrete. My mind raced as I struggled to think straight amidst the turmoil of betrayal. Then, as if fate played its hand, Richard's voice cut through the silence. "Come on, the car's too cramped. Let's do it outside next time, right?" His tone, light and carefree, was a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. It was the voice of a man without a care in the world, a man who didn't deserve the loyalty I had given him. I had to act. Moving silently, I grabbed a few of Richard's clothes strewn on the floor and snatched the garage remote control. My hands trembled, but my resolve was firm. I pressed the button and the shutter began its slow descent. "You too? So ardently engaged like monkeys. Deserve to be left just as you are, with nothing on, fitting for your behavior," I whispered to myself, a bitter taste in my mouth. I left the garage, closing them in their disgrace. I couldn't bear to stay a moment longer. The evidence in my hand was my ticket to freedom from this sham of a marriage. I had always known that Richard had a penchant for theatrics, but this was a new low. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the disrespect, the utter disregard for our marriage vows. As I walked away, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, but above all, a burning desire for retribution. Richard had made his bed, and now he was going to lie in it. This wasn't just the end of our marriage, it was the beginning of his downfall. I was going to make sure of that. In the quiet of my office the next day, my mind incessantly replayed the previous night's events. Every casual smile and tender word from Richard now seemed like a carefully crafted performance. How long had I been living in this facade? I sat there, looking at the desktop background, a photo of us on our wedding day. It felt like looking at two strangers. I deleted it with a click, a small but liberating act. The memories of our life together took on a different hue now. Richard, with his charming smile and words, had always been particular about appearances. Our home, an aging yet elegant house, was chosen by him for its character, he had said. But now I saw it for what it was, a stage for his performance. I recalled the day he brought home that vintage sports car, a purchase that came out of nowhere. "It's a man's dream," he had proclaimed. That car, which cost more than a small house, was his pride and joy. Now, it was nothing more than a symbol of his vanity and deceit. As my professional facade held up at work, my personal life crumbled. I was a successful marketing director, known for my sharp strategies and keen insights. But at that moment, I felt like a fool. Fooled by a man I trusted with my heart. The memory of an encounter with Richard at a corporate event a few months ago resurfaced. He was the center of attention, laughing and socializing with his usual flair. I had seen him exchange numbers with a young woman, but he had brushed it off as a business contact. How naive I had been. The day wore on, and every interaction felt like a chore. My colleague Mark noticed my distraction. "Everything okay, Anna?" he asked, genuine concern in his eyes. I forced a smile. "Just a long day," I replied, masking my turmoil. As I drove home, my thoughts were interrupted by a call from Richard. His voice, once comforting, now grated on my nerves. "Hey, love, running late tonight. Don't wait up," he said casually. "Sure," I replied, my voice steady. I wasn't going to confront him yet. I needed a plan, something that would hit him where it hurt the most, his ego and his wallet. That night, alone in our bed, I made a decision. Richard's betrayal wasn't just going to be the end of our marriage, it was going to be the start of his undoing. I was going to dismantle the life he so carefully built, piece by piece. Sitting in the dim light of my living room that evening, I initiated the plan I had been meticulously crafting. The laptop on my knees displayed the login screen to our home security system, a system Richard had installed for the safety of his precious car. Logging in, I navigated to the garage camera footage. My heart raced as I hit play, watching the scene unfold with a cold detachment. There they were, Richard and that woman, Lily, entangled in their sordid affair. The footage was damning, undeniable evidence of his betrayal. I downloaded the video, a digital weapon in my arsenal for the impending legal battle. Richard's reputation, his precious image, was about to be shattered. The next day at work, I was a shell of my usual self, my mind constantly on the impending confrontation. Mark approached my desk with a hesitant step. "Anna, you've been off. Anything I can do?" I shook my head, forcing a half smile. "Just a tough project. Thanks, though." As the day dragged on, my resolve only strengthened. Richard was not going to get away with this unscathed. That evening, Richard returned home with his usual carefree demeanor. "Hey, babe, I picked up Chinese for dinner. Thought you'd like a break from cooking." His words, once sweet, now felt like poison. I sat down at the dining table, my expression unreadable. "We need to talk, Richard." He paused, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "Everything okay?" I pushed my laptop across the table. The video queued up. "Why don't you tell me?" Richard's face paled as the video played. His eyes darted from the screen to my face, searching for some sign of forgiveness. "Anna, this isn't what it looks like," he stammered, his usual eloquence gone. I leaned back, my voice calm but laced with venom. "Oh, I think it's exactly what it looks like, Richard, you cheating on me, in our own home." Richard scrambled for words, his mask crumbling. "It was a mistake. I love you, Anna. We can work through this." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Work through this? There's nothing left to work through. I want a divorce, Richard, and I want you to suffer for what you've done." His face contorted in a mix of anger and panic. "You can't do this to me. Think about our reputation, our social standing. That's all you care about, isn't it? Your precious reputation. Well, it's about to come crashing down." I stood up, my decision final. "I'll be contacting my lawyer in the morning. I suggest you do the same." Richard sat there, a defeated man, as I walked away. The web of lies he had woven was unraveling, and I was going to make sure it ensnared him in the end. In the days that followed, my home felt like a battleground, charged with silent tension and unspoken words. Richard tried to regain control, alternating between desperate pleas and veiled threats. But I was unmoved, my resolve as firm as steel. At work, I maintained my professional facade, but the weight of the situation was a constant shadow. During a meeting, I found my thoughts drifting, only to be brought back by Mark's concerned voice. "Anna, you sure you're okay? You seem distracted." I brushed it off with a strained smile. "Just a lot on my mind. I'll be fine." But the truth was far from it. I was planning my next move, a move that would ensure Richard paid for his betrayal. The more he tried to sweet-talk his way out of the situation, the more resolute I became. One evening, as Richard returned from work, his usual mask of confidence was replaced by an air of defeat. He slumped into a chair, looking at me with weary eyes. "Anna, can't we talk about this? I know I messed up, but we can fix it." His words fell on deaf ears. I had heard enough of his lies. "There's nothing left to discuss, Richard. I've made up my mind." He leaned forward, desperation in his voice. "You're going to destroy everything we've built. Think about what people will say." "People? Is that all you care about? What about us, Richard? What about our marriage?" He fell silent, unable to answer. His concern for public image had always overshadowed our relationship. The next day, I sought solace with Mrs. Harper, my mentor and confidant. She listened intently as I poured out my heart. "You need a break from all this, Anna," she advised. "Why not take that international project? Get away for a while." The idea was appealing. A chance to escape the suffocating atmosphere at home and put some distance between Richard and me. I made the decision. I was going to take the project and use the opportunity to gather my strength for the impending legal battle. It was also a chance to rebuild myself away from the shadow of Richard's deceit. That evening, I informed Richard of my decision. His reaction was a mix of surprise and frustration. "You're leaving now? In the middle of all this?" "Yes, Richard. I need to focus on my career, something you clearly never respected." He watched helplessly as I packed my bags. For the first time, I saw a hint of fear in his eyes, fear of losing control, fear of facing the consequences alone. As I left for the airport, I felt a sense of freedom. The distance would give me perspective and strength. Richard's web of lies had been torn apart, and now it was time to rebuild my life on my terms. The international project was a breath of fresh air, a much-needed escape from the stifling situation back home. Immersed in work, I found a renewed sense of purpose and strength. Each successful meeting, every new connection, was a step towards reclaiming my independence. However, Richard's shadow loomed large, even miles away. His texts and calls, a mix of pleading and anger, were relentless. I responded only when necessary, keeping my replies brief and emotionless. One evening, after a particularly long day, my phone buzzed with yet another call from Richard. I hesitated but answered, bracing myself for another bout of emotional manipulation. "Anna, where are you?" This is getting ridiculous. You can't just run away from our problems. Richard's voice was strained, a mix of frustration and desperation. I replied coolly, I'm not running away, Richard. I'm focusing on my career, something I should have done a long time ago. You're abandoning our marriage over one mistake. You're being unreasonable, he retorted. A mistake? Richard, you betrayed our marriage. This isn't just a simple error you can sweep under the rug. His voice rose, tinged with anger. You're destroying our life over your pride. Come back and we can sort this out. We'll go to therapy, do whatever it takes. I could almost see him, the charming man I married, trying to weave his web of lies again. But that man was long gone, replaced by the reality of who he truly was. Therapy won't fix what you broke, Richard. I'm filing for divorce. It's over. There was a moment of silence, and then his voice, now colder. You'll regret this, Anna. You're making a huge mistake. I ended the call, a sense of finality washing over me. It was clear now. There was no salvaging what was left. Richard was only concerned about his image, his comfort. He didn't truly care about us or our marriage. Back in my hotel room, I looked out at the city lights reflecting on the path ahead. The divorce would be messy, no doubt. Richard would fight it, perhaps out of spite or fear of losing his public persona. But I was ready for it. I had gathered enough evidence, and with my career thriving, I was financially secure. As the days passed, I grew more determined. Richard's attempts to reach out became more infrequent, his messages a mix of self-pity and veiled threats, but they no longer affected me. I was moving forward, leaving the shadow of our failed marriage behind. Upon my return, the reality of my crumbling marriage hit me like a tidal wave. The house, once a symbol of our shared dreams, now felt like a prison of memories best forgotten. I moved into a modest apartment, a space that was mine alone, free from Richard's deceitful presence. The day of our final confrontation arrived sooner than I expected. Richard, looking more disheveled than I had ever seen him, had requested to meet under the guise of discussing the terms of our divorce. As I sat across from him in the sterile environment of a lawyer's office, I felt a surge of power. This was my territory, my rules. Richard started with his usual charm, but there was a hint of desperation in his voice. Anna, can't we settle this amicably? Think about the years we spent together. His words were like echoes from a past life. Amicable? After what you've done? You must be joking, I replied, my voice steady. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, then leaned forward. What do you want, Anna? Money? The house? Just name it. I looked him straight in the eyes. I want justice, Richard. You don't get to buy your way out of this. His facade cracked, revealing the selfish man I had come to know. You're ruining my life over this. I hope you're happy. Happy? No, Richard, but I will have peace knowing you can't hurt me anymore. The negotiation was tense, with Richard trying to manipulate every term in his favor, but I stood my ground, backed by solid evidence and a resolute legal team. As we neared the end of the meeting, Richard's demeanor changed. He was no longer the confident man I had married. Instead, he was a man cornered by his own actions, lashing out in a futile attempt to regain control. This is a mistake, Anna. You'll regret this, he hissed, his eyes dark with anger. I already regret many things, Richard. Letting you control my life for so long is one of them. This divorce is not a mistake. It's a correction. With the final papers signed, I walked out of the office feeling lighter than I had in years. The chains of our toxic marriage were finally broken. Richard had lost more than just a wife. He had lost the respect of his peers, the facade of the perfect husband, and soon he would face the full consequences of his actions in the eyes of the law and society. I had not only survived Richard's betrayal, but emerged stronger, more determined. The chapter of my life that included him was closed, and a new, promising chapter was waiting to be written. The months following the divorce were a whirlwind. I had successfully navigated the legal labyrinth, emerging victorious but not unscathed. The divorce was more than just a legal separation. It was a reclaiming of my identity, my independence. In my new apartment, each morning brought a sense of renewal. I relished the freedom, the quiet, and the space to think and plan my future. My career, which had always been a source of pride, now became my focus. I dove into my work with a renewed vigor, finding solace in my achievements. News of Richard's downfall spread like wildfire. His reputation, once his most prized possession, was now tarnished. His professional life suffered as clients and colleagues distanced themselves. The man who had thrived on control and appearances was now struggling to keep his world from crumbling. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had sold the vintage sports car, a symbol of his vanity, to cover legal expenses. It was a poetic end to the object that had once been a catalyst for our downfall. One evening, as I sat sipping coffee in my living room, I reflected on the journey. The pain, the betrayal, and the fight had transformed me. I was no longer the woman who had naively believed in Richard's lies. I was stronger, wiser, and more determined. A call from Mrs. Harper, who had been my rock throughout the ordeal, interrupted my thoughts. "Anna, how are you holding up?" "Better than ever," I replied, a genuine smile on my face. "That's wonderful to hear. You know, there's an opening for a senior position in the company's overseas branch. I think you'd be perfect for it." The offer took me by surprise. It was an opportunity I had always dreamed of but never pursued, held back by the confines of my marriage. I don't know what to say, Mrs. Harper. It's a big step. A step you're more than ready for, Anna. You've proven your strength and resilience. It's time to take on the world. I let the words sink in. This was more than just a job offer. It was a chance to start anew, to build a life on my terms, free from the shadows of the past. "I'll do it," I said, my voice steady with resolve. "It's time for a new adventure." As I ended the call, I looked around my apartment, a space that had become my sanctuary. It was time to leave it behind, to embark on a new journey. Richard's betrayal had shattered my world, but in its place I had built something stronger, something truly my own. As I packed my bags for the move, I felt a sense of excitement for the future, a future that was mine to shape.